Unit 8, Part 3. Just a quick remark on these three rules: duplication, commutation, and association, dup, com, and assoc. These abbreviations are what you will write as the justification whenever you use these rules. So notice for all three of these rules, they have two forms, right? Replace P with, you can replace any formula with the disjunction of that formula with itself, or you can replace any formula with the conjunction of that formula with itself, or, because you can go right-hand side to left-hand side, if you're given the disjunction of a formula with itself, you can replace it with just the formula. If you're given a conjunction of a formula with itself, you can replace it with just the formula. Okay, and similarly, commutation, which swaps the order, commutes the order of two statements. You can do it with disjunction and conjunction, right? Two forms. If you're given any disjunction, you can reverse the order. If you're given any conjunction, you can reverse the order. And association is this rule. What I want you to notice about these three rules that have these two forms is that is to just take careful note of what the operators are here. It's disjunction and conjunction. It is not the conditional, right? This is what Klenk says stresses as you run through these rules in Unit 8, which he introduces them, right? It's just, it doesn't work for the conditional. P is not logically equivalent to, is not replaceable with P hook P. As Klenk points out, P hook P is a tautology. P is not a tautology. Remember back to Unit 6, I put P forward as our paradigmatic contingency, right? P is either true or false. And the column, the truth table column under the major operator for P will have some entries which are true, some entries that are false. One entry which is true, one entry and false in a two-row truth table column, so that makes it a contingency, right? But P hook P is a tautology. Notice for commutation as well, you cannot replace P hook Q with Q hook P. Those are not equivalent formulas. And notice for association that you have to have, for the three formulas, separated by disjunctions or separated by conjunctions, notice a couple of things. There's no conditionals in this form either. There's no hooks in any of these. And notice also that it has to be the same formula in both positions, right? Here and here. They have to, if you've got two wedges, you can do the association, right? Move the parentheses. If you have two conjunctions, two dots, you can change the parentheses again. But if you've got a wedge and a dot, it's neither of these four forms, right? If it's dot wedge or wedge dot, that is not equivalent. If you have something like that, you're probably going to look at you might be looking at exportation or some other rule. Okay, so those are notes about those rules. Let me make a couple of remarks about pages 151 and 152. Where are we? 7. So I wanted to, so these her going through these rules. This point she makes here on the bottom of 151 is that this is where Klenk makes very clear what I was stressing in the Unit 7 lectures about rigor, right? Especially with regard to modus tollens. So double negation, the rule of double negation, is introduced in this Unit 8, but I talked about it in Unit 7, pointing out that you cannot infer not A from A hook not B and B, even though this is a truth functionally valid argument, right? We cannot use modus tollens here because our second premise is not the negation of the consequent, right? If you're going to use modus tollens, that means your P hook Q is A hook not B, which means your Q is not B, which means not Q has to be not B, right? So I said when I lectured in Unit 7, you have to distinguish the question of whether it is a truth functionally valid inference, right? And it is, right, to go from A hook not B also B, this premise and this premise too, not A, right? You are truth preserving when you're doing so, but no, you are not properly applying the rule of modus tollens doing that, right? Because it is not a proper, rigorous match of the form. See, so be very careful. You're always rigorously matching the form. Be clear on what your P and your Q are. Make sure your premises perfectly match the form and that it's the same Q in the same places, right? So that's what you don't have here. Here you've got Q as, right, if your second premise has Q as B, then you don't have, then your conditional would be P hook not Q. So it doesn't work. So read through that to get clear on that point about being rigorous. Of course, what you have to do is you use modus tollens. There's always tests on the exam that test you on this, right? That test you on. There's proofs where you will have to make sure you don't miss a step, right? The proper implication from these two formulas, from A hook not B and B, as she goes on to say, is what you have to do is double negate B, right? So that you have then the proper form of modus tollens, which is the conditional and its negation. And then you can infer not A, right? Okay, let's look at this A on page 152, this proof here. And my point in sort of going through this will be to show you how the use of these rules, the replacement rules, including the ones she's just discussed, like commutation, double negation, association, duplication, especially these new rules, see how her use of these rules is guided by her sense of where she needs to go in getting her conclusion, right? So it's when it's always right. Say your mantra when you're presented with a proof. Say your mantra. What's your mantra? It is remain conclusion driven, right? Where does this conclusion appear, right? So when you write the proof, you'll write these premises. All these steps will not appear. You don't have steps 5 till 10. You'll write not B right down the bottom after leaving all this space, and then these will appear, and you work backwards to figure out that these exact moves are the ones you need to make in order to get home, to get to the conclusion. Okay? So how does her thinking run in performing this proof? She looks at not B. She says, where does not B plus or minus a negation occur amongst the premises, right? So the premises are just 1 through 4 here. These are just the premises. So that's all she's looking at this point. Okay, there's no B's or not B's anywhere except premise 1. Okay, so premise 1, what's its form, right? You're asking, what's the major operator? What's the overall form? It's big and ugly, but she sees just a P or Q, right? It is a disjunction, okay? So that means, and the not B occurs over on the left disjunct, so more work will need to be done when I get the left disjunct, but first thing to do is I want to break off the left disjunct, so I need to get what? So what rule allows me to do that? I need to use disjunctive syllogism, right? Because this is a disjunction. I need to use disjunctive syllogism because disjunctive syllogism is the rule which gives me as a conclusion one of the disjunct. And I want to get this disjunct all by itself. Okay, so what do I need to apply the rule, right? What is my second premise for this rule? Or more specifically, what is the substitution instance of the second premise of disjunctive syllogism? Okay, it's going to be, right, if this is my P or Q, my Q is not D, so I need not D, right? I need the negation of the other disjunct. So I need not D, right, to do disjunctive syllogism. Okay, where's that going to come from? Well, not D. I know that that's equivalent to D by double negation. That's what you always think now. Now you got double negation, D, not D. They're almost the same formula, and you can transform one of them into the other one through the use of double negation. So you think if I can get D, then easily I can get not D. That's what you'll do with steps 6 to 7. But she's just looking through the premises, working backwards. How am I going to get D? Oh, I need E and F, right? Because why? D is the consequent of a conditional. That means I'll be using modus ponens to get D. How do I use modus ponens? I need E and F, okay? So that's what gets her off the mark, right? First of all, she's given F and E for a premise, but she wants E and F. But she only does this move, notice, right? This is what you don't see when you're just looking at a completed proof and you don't see how it's produced. But she does the commutation. Why? Because she knows she needs D. So she does com to turn F and E into E and F, right? So that gets her E and F, modus ponens, double negation, right? Now we have the disjunct by itself, right? And here, right, she wants to get, she's aiming at not B, right? So she sees, oh look, if I do this is one side of the rule of association, I can replace it with the other side. That's going to help me, right? Because then, notice at step 9 to step 10, she could have done dupe at that stage and made 10 A or not B by itself, right? She could have done dupe there on the subformula. Instead, though, right, she already has not A as a premise, so she just went disjunctive syllogism and then concluding with the duplication.